The poem Kubla Khan, we are going to study stanza by stanza and going to summarize the poem. The first stanza I am going to read now. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure-dome decree, where all the sacred river ran through caverns measureless to man down to a sunless sea. So twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were griddle round, and there were gardens bright with cinnus rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and here were forests ancient as the hills enfolding sunny spots of greenery. This is the first stanza of this poem, and in this first stanza, we come to know that the Sanadu is a place, and in that place there is one king. His name is Kubla Khan, and he ordered his what we can say. He ordered his servants to construct an impressive dome building for pleasure and recreation on the banks of the holy river Alp, which ran through a series of caves so vast that no one could measure them, and then down into an underground ocean. So they created a space with 10 miles of fertile earth surrounded by walls and towers, and in it there were gardens with sunny little streams and fragrant trees, as well as very old forest with sunny clearing in the middle. See what we have seen. Pleasure to means a palace, what we can say, a pleasurable palace, a fantastic palace, we can say enjoyable palace, a good, but we can say a good and attractive palace he wants to order his servants to build. He also, we come to know that in the next two lines there is one river. What kind of river? A sacred river. Sacred means a holy river, and that river was running through what we can say, through the caverns means a caves, through the caves, and these are measureless to man, means we cannot measure the caves, and where that alf has gone, that alf has ended itself into the sea, where in a sunless sea, means there is no sun in that sea, in a deep, what we can say, founded thing. See in the next lines, so twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girdled round, means 10 miles ground was there, that river was flowing. There are so many caves, and through that caves that river flows and meet to the sea. So 10 miles ground is there, and on that 10 miles ground Kubla Khan built a pleasure dome. What was there? The 10 miles ground has walls, and everywhere there are towers, girdle ground, round, means there is a round, there is towers and walls in that pleasure dome. And there were gardens bright with cinnus rills. What was there? In that pleasure dome, there was a garden. There were gardens. How were that gardens? That gardens were bright. In that garden, there were so many small streams. Sinus rills means a small streams. And because of that, sinus rills, there are so many flowers, they are blossoming. Where blossomed many an incense bearing tree. There are so many flowers, there are so many trees, they are coming out. And here, where forests, ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. So, this is the first stanza of this poem. See the next lines. What how poet have changed his tone, how narrator have changed his tone, not a poet, but how narrator, a speaker of this poem, have changed his tone. But oh, that deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedron cover. A savage palace, as holy and enchanted as ever beneath a waning moon, was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover. See, in the first stanza, that speaker have presented the happiness of that palace, that pleasure dome. The nature is presented in that pleasure dome. The fertile land is presented, the gardens are presented, what we can say small streams, scenic rills were presented, bearing trees, what we can say blossom flowers and trees were presented. It is like a forest, hills, towers and walls, sacred river. All this thing is presented in the first stanza. But in the second stanza, speaker has changed his tone. And now he was talking about that place itself, but he is saying it is so deep. Romantic chasm. Chasm means it is a enjoyable, but what kind of enjoy it is? It is a romantic enjoy. That slanted, which slanted down the green hill athwart a cedron cover. Athwart a cedron cover means there are trees, there is a hill, there are trees, and that trees cover the hill. There is a shadow, a savage palace. See, savage means not civilized. Sorry, not palace, place. What kind of place it is? That Xanadu? Is it a savage place or civilized place? See in the next line. As holy, savage may be holy. Sorry, savage can be holy. Can we say holy and enchanted? Holy can enchant us. So that way he was using a different kind of word, contradictory words, holy as well as savage, enchanted. As ever beneath waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon love. See, we are going to see the summary of these lines. But oh, how beautiful was that deep, impressive jog that cut through the green hill between the cedar tree. It was such a wild place, a place so sacred and bewitching that you might expect it to be haunted by a woman crying out for her satanic lover beneath the crescent moon. Crescent moon. There is a moon. Moonlight was there. There means once you see that place, that narrator is telling to us. Once we see that place, then we thought that it is also beautiful place, but it what we can say enchant us. It will create horror in our mind because there is such a climate. It is also holy, it is also savage. We feel like that. We feel that there is a woman who is crying, who is wailing for her lover. Her lover may have lost somewhere, and that's why she is crying under that moon, warning moon. So such kind of what we can say climate was there. In the next line, see, in this slide we are going to study. And from this charge enchantedness with kissless. turmoil seething as if this earth in fast thick pants were breathing. A mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift half-intermitted burst. Huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail or chaffy grain beneath the thresh's flail. And mid these dancing rocks at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river. Are you getting something? A different kind of word, fragmented, we can say, a seismic, enchanted word poet have used in this poem. See, and out of this, George. George means joy, happiness with its endlessly churning river. Means the sound of that flowing river. A geyser would sometimes erupt. Geyser would sometimes erupt as though the ground itself were breathing hard. This geyser would send shards of rock flying into the air like hail or like grain scattered as it is being harvested. And as it flung up these rocks, the geyser would also briefly send the water of the holy river bursting up into the air. This is the summary of this eight line. Turmoil, seething, see. And from this chasm means that enchanted place with kisles turmoil seething. What kind of sound we are listening there? Kisles means non-stop sound is there. Non-stop, what we can say, turmoil is there. And that we are listening, that we are observing, that narrator is observing. As if, how was that? How was that? The turmoil, Kislesh turmoil, it was as if this earth in fast, thick pants were breathing. As if the, the earth is breathing. Means earth is moving. There is something on the earth. So that Kislesh turmoil means earth is breathing. How it was breathing? A mighty fountain momently was forced. Because there were so many fountains, and that fountain were forced amid whose swift half intermittent burst. Amid, in between, meanwhile whose swift half intermittent burst. Huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail. Huge, big fragments vaulted like rebounding hail or chaffy grain beneath the thresher's flail. Thresher machine, thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks at once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river. See what kind of description poet have presented here. How that narrator is enchanted. What kind of explanation it is. It is presenting horror as well as it is presenting what we can say happiest joy through the description of this nature. See what kind of metaphor poet have used here. He has compared the natural object to so many things by giving so many examples. Threshers. How was that? That chasm was like the past thick pants were breathing. Who? That earth were breathing. Mighty fountain momently was forced. And in that turmoil, whose swift half interrupted burst means there is something sound, automatically it comes, but we can say suddenly it comes. and it interrupted so many things. That river is also dashing on the rocks. So many things poet have presented in this line. See, once again I am going to read a summary. See, and out of this George, that joy, that happiness means charge with its endlessly churning river means turmoil. That river flowing of the river is what we can say dashing on the both side of the river, both bank of the river. A geyser would sometimes erupt. What is a geyser? A geyser would sometime erupt. G A Y S E R. A geyser would sometime erupt. Geyser. A geyser would sometime erupt. Geysers means a hot spring in which water intermittently boils, sending a tall column of water and steam into the air. Okay, what kind of sea? Sea means there is a water. That water is boiling in the river also and would sometimes erupt. A geyser would sometimes erupt as though the ground itself you are breathing hard. Means it shows that that earth is moving, it is taking a breath. This geyser would send shards of rock flying into the air like hail, or like grain scattered as it is being harvested. See, that movement is compared to so many things. That flowing of the river, that what we can say dashing of the water is compared to so many things. It is compared to kislesh turmoil seething. It is like earth in fast thick pants we are breathing, fountain, and also voltage like rebuilding rebounding hail, and beneath the threshers flail, chaffy grain beneath the threshers flail. So this is the comparison given by the poet in these lines. See, into the air like hail, or like grain scattered as it is being harvested, and as it flung up these rocks, the geyser would also briefly send the water of the holy river bursting up into the air. Means there is what we can say evaporation of the water. See, we are going to move towards the next lines of this poem. See, 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion through wood and dale, the sacred river ran, then reached the caverns measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. And mid this tumult, Kubla heard from far ancestral voices professing war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, as sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. As sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. See the summary of these lines. The holy river ran for 5 miles in a lazy, winding course through woods and fields before it reached the incredibly deep caves and sank in a flurry into the much stiller ocean. And in the rushing waters of the caves, Kubla Khan heard the voices of his ancestors, predicting that war would come. The shadow of Kubla Khan's pleasure palace was reflected by the waves, and you could hear the sound of the geyser mingling with that of the water rushing through the caves. This was truly a miraculous palace. Kubla Khan's pleasure palace was both sunny and had icy caves. This is the summary of these lines. See, 5 miles meandering with a mazy motion. Mazy means a lazy, slow motion. What is meandering? The river is meandering with slow motion. It is flowing slowly through wood and dale. The sacred river ran. That sacred river is flowing through the wood. Then where it goes? It reached the caverns, measureless to man. There are so many caves, human being cannot count it. So the caves measureless to man. And sank Budne, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. Means a big, huge, a deep ocean, profound ocean. That river mingle into that ocean and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean. And amid this tumult, Kubla heard from far. Kubla Khan was there, that listener was there, speaker of the poem was there, and he listened the sound of his ancestral voices. And what his ancestrals are saying, they are professing or predicting the war. They are predicting the war. His whose Kubla Khan's ancestral were predicting the war. The speaker observed the shadow of the dome, shadow of the palace into that waves of the river, where floated midway on the waves. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated. Floated means what we can say shine. Floated midway on the waves. Where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the cues. He who, Kubla Khan, heard the sound, that mingled sound, where from the sound of fountain and the sound of cues was there, and in that mingled sound he also heard the sound of that ancestral voice. So that he is saying, the speaker is saying, it is a miracle. It was a miracle of a rare device. It was a miracle of rare device. A sunny pleasure dome with a caves of ice. A sunny pleasure dome with a caves of ice. See, he is saying on that floating river, he was observing the shadow of that palace, and that palace is looking like a caves of ice. That pleasure dome with caves of ice, sunny. So that kind of description is there. Actually, we know that this poem is a dream of a poet, and that's why that dream he has presented in the lines, so that there are some hard words, there are so many what we can say disturbing images poet have used in these lines. See the last stanza of the poem. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw. I personify. Speaker. Speaker of this poem has saw one lady with a musical instrument, a damsel, a lady with a dulcimer, a musical instrument. In a vision once I saw, in dream, that poet, or we can say a speaker, saw. It was an Abyssinian maid. Who was that damsel? Damsel was Abyssinian maid. Maid means a woman. And on her dulcimer she played. She was fluting. She was singing something. She was doing something with that musical instrument, with that dulcimer. Singing of Mount Obera. What she was doing? She was singing Mount Obera. Could I review within me her symphony and song? See, the speaker of this poem, the writer of this poem, is expecting to become famous as a poet like that Abyssinian maid. He wants to make his poem a very famous. It should be readable according to him. That's why he said, Could I review within me her symphony? Symphony means that sound, that fantastic sound and song. To such a deep delight, it would win me. To such a deep delight, it would win me that with music loud and long, I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of eyes, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware, his flashing eyes, his floating hair, wave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread, for he on honeydew has fed and drunk the milk of paradise. This is the ending of this poem. In a vision, I once saw an Ethiopian woman play a stringed instrument and sing about a mountain in Ethiopia. If I could recreate within myself the sound of her instrument, that her song, it would bring me so much joy that I would build Kubla Khan's pleasure palace in the sky above me. That sun filled dome, those caves full of ice, and everyone who heard the song would look up and see what I had built, and they would cry out, be careful. Look at his wild eyes and crazy hair. Make a circle around him 3 times and refuse to look at him. He has eaten the food of the gods and drunk the milk of heaven. See, once again I will read. And everyone, see, those caves full of ice, in the sky above me, that sun-filled dome, those caves full of ice, and everyone who heard the song would look up and see what I had built, and they would cry out, be careful. Look at his wild eyes and crazy hair. Make a circle around him 3 times and refuse to look at him. He has eaten the food of the gods and drunk the milk of heaven. See what kind of expectation poet or a speaker from this poem has presented. In this last stanza, poet has or speaker has said that there was one lady, Abyssinian maid. She was singing a song with her musical instrument. That song was about Mount Obera, and he has listened that song. He has influencefully that song has enchanted him, and he was enjoying that song. But he remember, he expect, he dreams, he should right, we can say he should be able to sing such a song. Who? But poet is not a singer, so that poet expect might be. St. Coleridge expect that his poem should be so powerful as the song of that damsel, Abyssinian maid. That's why he says, could I review within me her symphony and song? That two lines are presenting his expectation, his desire to become famous as a poet. And he said, if I would have sing, I would have sung like that dulcimer, that Abyssinian maid, then everyone could have remember me. He say what he says. To such a deep delight, it would win me. Everyone will remember him. That with music loud and long, his poem will be readable. I would build that dome in here. Means that Kubla Khan have built a dome. And because of that dome, he is in the memory of every generation. If I got such a powerful memory, such a powerful imagination, then that speaker or poet is saying that he will create a good poem and that poem will be read by everyone. So that poem will become his dome, a pleasure dome, like Kubla Khan's pleasure dome, a palace. That sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there. Poet is saying that whoever will read my poem will observe that beauty. They will observe, they will see the caves of ice like the dome of Kubla Khan. And all who heard should see them there. And all should cry. They also will get enchanted from the poem and they will cry, beware, beware. His flashing eyes, he's floating here. The listener will say that be aware about the poet's flashing eyes, poets floating here. Wave a circle round him thrice and close your eyes with holy dread. Who will say that? Listener will say that because they will say that for he on honey dew has fed and drunk the milk of paradise. He has get food from the God and drunk the milk of heaven, and that's why poet will become a famous, and his poem will become a famous like a pleasure dome of Kubla Khan's palace. So in this last tanga, poet's desire is presented. He wants to become a famous like Kubla Khan. He wants to make his poem famous like the pleasure dome. And that's why you are expecting to listen the sound of that damsel and also he wants to make his poem like that song.